Imagine this. You're strolling through an average parking lot in England. Nothing but yellow lines, concrete, and wait. Is that a human skeleton? Well, surprise, it's a king, and not just any king. It's Richard III. Yes, the guy from Shakespeare's My Kingdom for a Horse. That guy. For over 500 years, the world thought he was buried under a river, thrown out like last week's garbage. But turns out, he was chilling under a reserved parking spot in Leicester. This is the true story of one of the greatest royal mysteries in British history, and how a determined woman, a quirky historical society, and some absolutely wild twists uncovered a long-lost king using DNA, maps, and one very convenient parking lot. Welcome to Bizilon, where real history is stranger than fiction. The king who vanished into rumor. Richard III was the last Plantagenet king of England, and honestly, the man had a rough PR run. After dying in 1485 at the Battle of Bosworth, the one that ended the Wars of the Roses, his enemies wasted no time dragging his name through the mud. Henry Tudor, soon to be King Henry VII, paraded Richard's body through the streets, dumped him in a monastery, and that was, supposedly, the end. But over time, the story got murkier. Documents said he was buried under Greyfriars Church in Leicester, but by the 1600s, a new theory took over. An angry mob dug him up and threw his bones into a river under Bow Bridge. Why? Because a historian named John Speed got the location completely wrong, and his version became gospel. Ironically, John Speed was, well, not very speedy at fact-checking. The woman who said, "I can find him." Fast forward to the early 2000s, most historians had moved on, but one woman, Philippa Langley, was obsessed. Like Sherlock Holmes in a hoodie obsessed. She was part of the Richard III Society, a group that believed Richard wasn't the hunchbacked villain Shakespeare painted, but rather a misunderstood king. So Philippa starts digging through archives, not literally yet, and finds inconsistencies in Speed's maps. Turns out he confused Greyfriars with Blackfriars. Wrong church, wrong spot. Philippa tracks down newer maps and overlays them on top of modern Leicester, and that's when she makes the connection. The site of Greyfriars Church isn't by the river, it's under a city council parking lot. Yes, a parking lot. And this is where things get weird. She visits the site, and standing over one spot, she says she feels something. And the best part? The parking space she's drawn to has a giant white R painted on it, reserved for Richard. Digging for royalty, literally. In 2012, she convinces the University of Leicester to dig up the parking lot, but funding is tight. They can only afford 3 trenches. It's a total shot in the dark, but within 6 hours of the first day, they hit bone. And not just any bone. A skeleton with a badly curved spine, battle wounds to the skull, and it's lying in exactly the east-west orientation a king would have been buried in. It was like finding a needle in a haystack, and that needle had scoliosis. DNA doesn't lie unless it's a family secret. Okay, here's where it gets very CSI Medieval Edition. The team needs to prove this is Richard III, so they run DNA tests using mitochondrial DNA, the kind passed down by mothers only. And you know what? They find a living descendant, Michael Ibsen, a cabinet maker in Canada. Imagine opening your 23andMe results and finding out you're the heir to a 15th century throne. But just to be sure, they trace another line, another living relative. The results? It's a match. Also, carbon dating shows the skeleton lived during Richard's lifetime. His wounds match battle records, his diet, high in seafood and protein, just what a royal would eat. It was Richard. The final clue, and one last plot twist. The discovery causes a media frenzy. The bones are carefully reburied in Leicester Cathedral in a royal ceremony. But here's the kicker. Even after all this, some skeptics weren't convinced, so the team ran 3D facial reconstructions using Richard's skull, and guess what? It looked just like his painted portraits from the 15th century. Straight nose, high cheekbones, crooked spine. History had been right all along, just buried under tarmac and bureaucracy. You might be thinking, why does any of this matter? Well, Richard III's story is about more than bones and battlefields. It's about how history is written, who gets to tell the story, and how myths can become facts if repeated long enough. Richard went from royal villain to missing corpse to historical redemption arc, thanks to a passionate woman with a map and a feeling. Also parking lots, more dangerous than we thought. So here's the moral of the story. Never trust a guy named John Speed with your legacy. Parking lots might be hiding ancient kings. DNA never lies, unless you're on Maury. Richard III's story reminds us that truth can be lost, found, and sometimes it's just under your tires.